Hey guys, another one-take review as well as the 17th and final, that's right, final entry in my Rock Hall review series for 2022 at least. If I do this again next year, then, well, obviously this isn't the final entry because I will have plenty more entries to do then. But for now, for this season, if you will, of the Rock Hall review series, this is my final, 17th and final episode. And today I'm talking about one of my personal favorite musicians and one of my personal favorite albums by said musician, The Dreaming by Kate Bush. The Dreaming is an album that, while popular among some crowds, primarily critics as well as the actual Kate Bush fan base, is sort of passed over for other Kate Bush albums like The Kick Inside or Hounds of Love, especially the latter, with Hounds of Love being easily her most beloved, popular, well known, and praised record. But not only has basically everything that can be said been said about Hounds of Love, there's nothing I can really add to that conversation of importance, at least in my opinion. But The Dreaming is also one of my favorite records of hers, and even though it is not necessarily the most popular in her discography, I do think it's an album that deserves much more attention beyond just the Kate Bush fan base and the people that end up reviewing albums like these. So I decided that it would be a perfect mixture of beloved record and personal favorite record of mine to end off the series. As you might expect if you're familiar with Kate Bush's music, she sounds absolutely flawless here in terms of vocals, and the way that she goes between very angelic and beautiful vocals at some points and other songs featuring almost anxious, mysterious, sometimes just downright out there vocal styles makes this one of her most interesting albums from the get go. I mean, pretty much all of her albums have some level of experimentalism in terms of vocals, whether you're going to The Kick Inside with Wuthering Heights with that very high pitched vocals that are almost childlike that arguably haven't been seen in many other pieces by Kate Bush, or any other record really. But my point is, I do think that The Dreaming especially is strengthened by a wide range of vocal work and a consistently great example of Kate Bush's vocal work and range. And while there are many factors of Kate Bush's music in general that make her such an artistically intriguing figure, in my personal opinion, and in my own musical sphere, if you will, I do think that her vocal work has kind of defined her sound, defined her music, and has overall just seen her take that perfect balance between vocal excellency and just uniqueness and obvious personality to create what is easily one of the best performers in all of pop music history, at least in terms of vocal performance. With that being said, as I stated before, I've always found The Dreaming to be one of Kate Bush's most immediately interesting releases, as it features what is arguably a handful of some of her most avant-garde moments. You have songs like the absolute classic that is Sat in Your Lap that just have a sort of, I won't say eerie, but a very artistic feel to them that is very different from what you would find on, say, Hounds of Love, for example. And other songs like the wildly underrated Houdini, which is a major album highlight for me, really show off just how experimental she was willing to be with the typically aforementioned very angelic vocal style and the very uncommon, almost demonic vocal style, and the bouncing between the two of them throughout that song in particular, that really show that Kate Bush is an artist in the truest sense of the word, as in she's willing to experiment and do something different and unique that makes her stand out from the people that came before her peers, and the people that came after her, while also painting some incredibly beautiful pictures with each individual song throughout The Dreaming. To expand on that, The Dreaming also has some pretty interesting Baroque pop influences as well, and while Kate Bush has never been an artist to shy away from experimenting with the multitude of subgenres of pop music that there are, of which, again, there are many, she is very interesting in her Baroque pop kind of stance. And it doesn't take over the entire album. I think it's best seen on the track There Goes a Tenor, which is another personal favorite of mine. Basically, every song on this album is a personal favorite of mine. I guess I should probably stop saying that. But nonetheless, my point still stands. I do think it's an interesting take on the Baroque pop genre, and few have done it as well and as just nicely and as subtly, most of all subtly, because again, like I said, Baroque pop does not, overshadow the genres of The Dreaming or anything like that. It's really only a small handful of songs, but the pop subgenre's influence does really take a pretty big place here in terms of just influences on the record and influences on Kate Bush's sound on the album at this time. And I do think that it's for the better. It makes for some very interesting styles on some of the more oddball kind of tracks. The Dreaming was primarily produced by Kate Bush herself, and if this doesn't prove that Kate Bush had an absolute knack for production, then I don't know what does, in all honesty. This is, along with, again, like I mentioned before, Hounds of Love and some of her other albums, just among the first music that I think of when I think of the phrase timeless music. I mean, there are just songs here that completely transcend the definition of the word aging. For a record that came out in 1982, The Dreaming probably could have come out yesterday, and if I didn't know who Kate Bush was, I would probably believe you, if I'm being honest, and none of that would be possible without Kate Bush's production, which just makes this sound as clean as any album from 1982 can, and probably more clean than any album from 1982 should. Overall, The Dreaming is a fairly popular and generally well respected, but still very underrated album in my eyes. And I love this album and have an undying passion for it because it really just kind of gives the listener a window into Kate Bush's more kind of quirky and just generally strange side that, while I won't say she totally shies away from on anything else more popular like Hounds of Love or anything like that, I do think this is the most prime example of that side of her music, and I do think it's something to listen to. I would consider it essential to hear, and even though I won't say it's my favorite Kate Bush album just because of the overwhelming, consistent amazingness of her discography, I will say this is without a doubt within my top 3 albums of Kate Bush. And with that being said, I'm going to have to give this album 4.5 stars out of 5. Similar to the low end theory, just a few entries ago in the series, I was very, very close to giving The Dreaming a 5 out of 5, but alas, I can't quite bring myself to do that. That's probably saved for a different Kate Bush album on a different day. And this is usually the part where I sign off because, that's the end of the review. I say, see you guys in the next one, blah, blah, blah. But this is the Rock Hall Review series and the last episode of the Rock Hall Review series. So I'm going to discuss, finally, does Kate Bush deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And will she get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And as far as does she deserve it, I would say absolutely. Kate Bush is obviously an artist whose popularity is restricted mostly to one area, which is Europe, generally speaking. As far as I'm aware, she's not incredibly popular in Asia or Africa, Australia, South America. And while I know for a fact that she isn't popular in North America because in all of my lifetime I've never heard one of my fellow Americans even mention Kate Bush ever. So I'm pretty confident that she's not too popular here in North America. Anyway, I don't know about the Canada, but my point is she's kind of restricted to one area in terms of popularity, but she isn't restricted in terms of influence. I believe that you can still hear Kate Bush's influence in modern pop music, whether you're going for the quirkier side of artists like Lady Gaga to even the more just like clean PG-13 kind of side of things like Dua Lipa. I do think that Kate Bush's influence still stands high and mighty. And not only that, but not only has Kate Bush influenced tons of modern pop artists, but she sounds like a modern pop artist. I truly believe that Kate Bush has almost not aged whatsoever in terms of musical sound, ability, and the soundscapes that she creates on not only The Dreaming, but virtually her entire discography sound like they could have come out within the past year or so. Now, while I do think she is a massive snub for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, then rises the question, will she get in? And I don't think she'll get in this year. Like I said, she's kind of restricted to one area in terms of popularity, and while the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, of course, is located in Cleveland, which is an American city, and it's a very, American institution, there are artists that are only really relevant to the United States that are inducted, but then there's artists that are only really relevant to pretty much all of Europe that aren't inducted, so, I mean, really, it's just kind of I would just say a geographical thing, as much as I hate to say it, but even still, Kate Bush does have a lot of critical praise. American music publications like Rolling Stone magazine have continuously cited her as a fantastic and very talented artist, rightfully so. So it's not like she's totally obscure over here, it's just she's totally obscure to the mainstream public. That, of course, means that she's not really, boosting ticket sales too much or anything like that, and, well, as much as I would like influence to come first in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's induction process, it's the commercial success and it's the how much money will you pull in factor. And Kate Bush, I'm going with Not a lot. I don't think there's enough people in Europe in general that even remotely care about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that would want to actually fly over here to go to a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony, and I just don't think she's popular enough in the States to really get that big of a name going. And even still, if we're just taking into account the fact that the voters themselves, which are previously inducted living members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, again, it's mostly, like I said, American and generally speaking, North American artists that are voting for these people. And I do think that, again, it's just going to be too obscure of an artist for North American voters to deal with, to recognize, to induct. But even still, I do think eventually she could get in if we continuously keep inducting more English acts. That's more English votes, and that's probably more English votes going towards Kate Bush. Even still, there is one other factor that I've been meaning to bring up since it's only something that has been made apparent as of, I believe, yesterday as I'm filming this, which is Dolly Parton is asking to no longer be nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Of course, Dolly was the first entry that I did in the series. I reviewed Jolene. I ended up giving that a 5-star out of 5 rating. And I also believe that I said in that review that she was almost a definite inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that the only thing that could stop her is the fact that she is a country artist. And that is the exact reason she's citing that she no longer wants to be nominated. So if that's going to happen, then the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame will likely drop her from the nominee list. However, I do think there's multiple paths that that could take. It's important to take in consideration the fact that Ozzy Osbourne in the early 2000s, before Black Sabbath were inducted, asked the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to take Sabbath off of the nominee list, and, well, they never did, and then Sabbath got inducted, so that could always be the case here too, where Dolly Parton is just repeatedly kept on the list, but I truly believe she's too much of a publicly beloved figure to not be taken seriously when she asks something like that. So I feel like they could potentially actually take her off of the nominee list. Of course, it's not a definite or anything like that, but if they do end up taking Dolly off of the nominee list, then I will expect a different solo female artist to get in, because there's a major push for female representation in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is a good thing, because there's a major lack of it right now. And, I mean, Kate Bush could always take that spot. Of course, you've got Pat Benatar and Carly Simon on the ballot this year, which are much more appealing to North American voters and just voters in general. I think both are at least significantly more popular, just less critically beloved. But I do think that at least opens an extra lane for Kate Bush. And with that being said, I don't think she's going to get in this year, but it just kind of goes to show that there are ways that even the most oddball artists could get in. And even though I don't think it'll happen, it's always important to remember that the musical excellence category is always a thing as well, and LL Cool J was awarded that, well, award last year after being on the performer nominee category, so that's a potential for Kate Bush as well. Same thing with Beck, who I also reviewed earlier in the series, and even though I don't think it'll happen for either of them, I think that'll probably go to either the MC5 and or Fela Kuti. It's still a possibility. But with that being said, I do think she deserves to be in, absolutely. She's a major influence on modern mainstream pop music, even without a lot of people realizing it. I don't think she'll get in this year, unfortunately, and The Dreaming is a 4.5 stars out of 5, nearly 5 star. It's a beautiful, beautiful album that is just as dissonant and haunting as it is very graceful and soothing. And for that, I have to give it 4.5 stars out of 5. So, yeah, 4.5 stars out of 5, should get in. Probably won't get in this year, but might get in eventually. And with that being said, that's the end of this review, as well as the end of the Rock Hall review series for this season, at least. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I actually had a really good time going through it. I had a good time starting this with a personal favorite album of mine with Jolene. I had a good time revisiting albums that I originally wasn't sure how to feel about, like Odelay by Beck. I had a great time ranting about albums that I dislike, like that Lionel Richie album that I already forgot the name of because it was so dreadfully boring. I had a good time doing this series, and I hope to do it again next year with a fresh set of nominees, some old faces, and some fresh faces as well. But until then, that is the end of this season of the Rock Hall Review series and this review, and I will see you guys in the next one.